D. Bucky Lecker says, I'm honored to present my third question to the most honorable Bible geek. Thanks, Derek. This means a lot. So the good and wise doctor often uses analogies such as peeling the onion, and there is no Superman, but Clark Kent existed. Thus, my question to Dr. Price is a short one. Eisenman writes extensively about James, but what's left to Rome's having put all of its guns behind Peter after the rest of the onion has been peeled from the Jesus story? Posted the same in the other Facebook group. And add to this, since I've only seen the first Star Wars episode, I'm curious as to how many more you would recommend viewing, Dr. Price, before you said in your chat with Drew they started to slide.
Well, as Nixon used to say, the great Quaker theologian, let me answer the second part of your question first. I'd say if you've seen A New Hope, you can stop right there, because the second one, The Empire Strikes Back, already reeks of fanish idiocy with the dialogue between Princess Leia, whom they suddenly start pronouncing Leia, I don't know why, and Han Solo. It's just... It becomes childish, and when Yoda gets in there, okay, it's the Muppets. In fact, it's the same guy, Frank Oz. It's like Fozzie Bear as a Jedi Master. Ruined film, did I not? The only good part of it is when the fight toward the end between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, where he says, "I am your father." That is so shocking that even though a jerk friend of mine told me, we were driving to see the thing on the first day it was out, "Oh, I hear Darth Vader's Luke's father." Why did you tell me that? Even knowing it, once I saw it, I thought, oh my God, that's great. So there are parts of it I like, but then you're really down in the sewer with the third one. There's some interesting visual stuff, but they ruined Darth Vader's character, who's the obedient lapdog of the Emperor. What's going on? The three prequels, come on. Interesting to watch once, maybe, but it's confusing. I still can't figure out what the Emperor was up to and so on. I never even saw the last one. It killed my... Oh boy, I tell you, when the guy that's going to grow up to be Darth Vader is called Annie in the first one, what are you doing? Why did they let... who was the guy? I forget now. The director... I'm losing my wits. George Lucas. Why did they let this guy continue with this? Anyway, there's this Mandalorian series on TV. I haven't seen it, but I don't plan to because of all this fanaticism about Baby Yoda. The old one was bad enough. I mean, they're just saying, Price, don't watch it. So, at any rate, I wish they'd have stopped after the first one. Anyway, about the other one with Robert Eisenman, I think Harnack put his finger on this long ago when he had an article. I don't know if it's ever been translated. I don't remember the German title, but Ethelbert Stauffer, a more recent New Testament scholar, but still long ago, he did an article called The Caliphate of James, where he made what I think is the best argument for seeing Jesus and James as historical figures, namely that from what we're told in these kind of murky stories / legends about the early church, that when Jesus was gone from the scene, whether just dead or in heaven, whatever, it doesn't matter, for this, that his brother becomes the leader of the community, and then when he dies, another one of Jesus' brothers, Simon or Simeon, becomes the head of it. Well, that sure sounds like the caliphate of Islam. When Muhammad died, well, you had two factions almost immediately. There were the caliphs, were Abu Bakr, who was Muhammad's uncle, and then Uthman, and boy, I'm having trouble with names lately. Uthman and Umar, or Omar. These were early companions of the prophets. Well, that's kind of like Peter being in charge, one of the disciples. But who's going to be the fourth caliph? The partisans of Ali, who was Muhammad's cousin and adopted son, they thought he should have been the caliph all along, but they were willing to be team players. But when the third one died, Ali was chosen to be the caliph, but there was a dynastic war, and he was deposed, and that was the beginning of Shiite Islam. Shiite means partisan, the partisans of Ali, and they evolved in a different direction, and today it's Iran is the great Shiite power, though I think there's another little one. And oddly enough, the circle of the relatives of Muhammad, especially Ali, were known as the pillars. Well, it kind of looks like that in the New Testament, the pillars, James, Cephas, and John, may be identical to some of the relatives of Jesus listed in, I think it's Mark chapter 6, where it says, "Are not his brothers among us?" And then it names them, doesn't name any sisters. It says his sisters, but no names. But they name the brothers as Joseph, Judas, Simeon, and Jacob, or James. And why is there a list of those names? I mean, they don't bother with the sisters. Well, it's probably because that was a kind of a list, like the list of the 12 disciples. But it's a different group. Is there overlap? I mean, all those names were common. And in Galatians, Paul mentions they were reputed to be pillars, the three, Cephas, James, and John. And he doesn't say anything about the 12, just the three pillars. And he needs their approval, apparently. And James, he says, is the brother of the Lord, not the brother of Jesus, interestingly, but the brother of the Lord. Now, what does this all add up to? Well, Harnack said, oh yeah, in 1 Corinthians 15, the appearances of Jesus, it says, first he appeared to Peter and the 12, then to James and all the apostles. What? The 12 and the apostles? We usually think of them as the same group. And Harnack said, well, yeah, they are. What you have here is a list of appearances cobbled together from different Christian traditions. And this implies that some regarded James as the head of the apostles, others regarded Peter as that. There were rival Jewish Christian factions, but that's over by the time of the 1 Corinthians 15 list is cobbled together. And so they're trying to get everybody together, and so both of these actually rival claims are just inserted side by side, something not that unusual in the New Testament. So it's two factions. And in Luke, we hear that Peter was the big guy, but after the attempt on his life, he goes off somewhere and says, tell James I'm gone. And then we hear a few chapters later that though Peter does return for the Jerusalem council, it's James who hears everybody's opinions and issues the decree as if he's in charge. They don't vote on it. He says, brethren, my decision is. So Luke, who is always trying to harmonize and paper over factional disputes among early Christians, is basically saying, well, okay, Peter was the man in charge. Where did James come from? Well, after Peter had to leave, and then James became his successor. Not unreasonable. So the tension arises from James and Peter being the factional figureheads of two different Jewish groups. And of course the Hellenistic, Gentile-leaning Christianity of Paul and Apollos and others didn't really care about those groups or people, and so they don't speak of them in any particular reverence, like in Galatians. The so-called pillars, though, I don't think they're worth anything. And if it's the same group intended, in 2 Corinthians, he speaks of these super apostles, huperleon apostoloi, super apostles, and he says, I'm in no way inferior to them. You got factional disputes, which, by the way, is also the reason you have some gospel passages that make the relatives of Jesus saints, and others that make them bums. They don't believe in him and all that stuff. They think he's crazy and all. But others say, oh, no, James is at the Last Supper, the Gospel of the Hebrews. That really explains everything. Now, again, no time machine. We don't know. We weren't there. But it appears that I think Harnack, though elements of what he said are disputable, I mean, there's just fragments of evidence, that seems to me to be the paradigm that makes the most sense. This is assuming that these people were historical, and some of them no doubt were. I mean, there must have been some people who started Christianity. Why not call them by those names?